2020 has been a difficult year for most people. Natural disasters and man-made issues have made the news quite a depressing read most of the time. However, there has been some good news. Progress made in some cold cases could bring answers to decades-old questions, while there are countless stories of missing people being found despite being feared dead by many. These are 5 missing people that were found in 2020. Number 5. It's easy to underestimate just how terrifying living with a condition such as dementia or Alzheimer's could be, especially for those who don't know anyone suffering from the illness. In some cases, people and places they've known for years can appear as strangers and completely unknown. When people you've never met before try to take you somewhere you don't know, it's natural to want to get away, which goes some way to explain why people suffering with these conditions often go missing. In other cases, it's simply a case of the vulnerable person trying to make their way home, even if they're already at home. In any case, it's always important to take cases of missing people suffering from dementia seriously. Michael Jensen was one such missing person. Michael suffered from dementia, which impacted his short-term memory and communication skills. A brain tumor diagnosed in 2013 also meant he was at risk of seizures and needed to be under round-the-clock supervision. At 46 years of age, he lived in a care home in Waterloo, Iowa, when he disappeared from the facility in July of 2020. Michael had climbed out of an unlocked window and was last seen walking away from the facility at 11:20 p.m. on the 6th of July. It's still not clear why he wanted to escape, but Michael had previously wandered off and was supposed to be staying in a secure room. His friends were also concerned he may have tried to escape after the care home told him that he couldn't leave to attend to his daughter's graduation due to COVID-19 concerns. A large search party set out in search of Michael, equipped with sniffer dogs and drones, but there was no sign of the missing man. It was after 3 days of torrential rain and high temperatures that Michael was found, less than a mile away from the care home he had left. A workman who was supposed to be surveying a nearby area to lay down utility lines spotted a man in a helmet lying in a ditch. He didn't recognize him as Michael at first. Given he was lying with most of his body in a pool of water, he assumed something was wrong. Michael was taken to a medical center where he was described as being in serious but stable condition after his ordeal. He's now on the road to recovery. Number 4. Jessica O'Connor and Dion Reynolds were both competent hikers with experience in the rugged terrain they were supposed to be exploring. But when they didn't return home when expected, their friends and family grew concerned. What followed was a major search of some of the most remote lands on the planet. The two 23-year-olds had set off from near the Anatori River in the Kaurangi National Park on New Zealand's South Island. The area is known for its stunning scenery and wildlife, but it's a challenging trek for even the most experienced hikers, and there were no marked trails in the area where Jessica and Dion were believed to be. Despite the difficulties, police and rescue workers remained optimistic the couple could survive a few weeks. Even in the early winter months, the weather hadn't been too bad. The river hadn't flooded, and they weren't worried about any clues being washed away by the rain. The real problem would be the below-freezing temperatures they would have had to experience every night. However, it was believed they had good equipment, including a small tent they could shelter in. The search initially focused in the area where it was understood the couple had begun their trek. In the first week, a small campsite and footprints believed to have belonged to the pair were found. However, rescue teams were unable to track them, and after almost 2 weeks, the search team considered broadening the net to include the nearby coastal area. Finally, after 19 days, the couple were found in a remote area of the park. Though experienced, they'd gotten lost in the fog early in their trip. They found a water source in the form of a nearby stream and hunkered down, knowing it was important to stay put if they were going to be rescued. Despite their preparations, they were beginning to run out of food when a rescue helicopter spotted the smoke from their campfire on May 27th, allowing the couple to be rescued by helicopter and brought to a local hospital with only minor injuries. Number 3. University student young Chen was missing for more than 5 days in Talabajara Valley as Australia's Gold Coast experienced some of the heaviest rain it had in years. Chen had been on a walk with a friend who was local to the area and knew the light rain as they set off on February 12th would mean the waterfall they were heading to would be flowing. They'd been hiking for around 2 hours when Chen began to fall behind. Her friend had attempted to climb higher at a junction near 2 waterfalls, but when he fell back to where he'd last seen Chen, she was gone. Once she realized she was lost, Chen had tried to make her own way out of the dense bushland, but only managed to get more lost. She had her phone, but there was no reception in the area, and she aimed to hike higher in the hopes that she could get some reception that would help for the call. Meanwhile, rescue efforts were hampered by the extreme wet weather. While most of Australia was celebrating the rains, the wettest February on record for the Gold Coast meant early search efforts had to be called off. As the rain began to ease, police and search crews, as well as local landowners, resumed the search of the waterways and surrounding bushland. They began to fear Chen may not be found alive, as many of the rivers in the area had flooded and she didn't have much experience surviving in the wilderness. But they held on to hope that she would be found safe. After 5 days of searching, a small group of rescuers, led by a local landowner, heard Chen's call for help. She'd been sheltering in caves and somehow made her way up to a steep cliff near the waterfall where she'd originally gone missing. Rescue workers were amazed and climbed the cliff in wetsuits in order to recover her. Once back on solid ground, Chen was taken to a hospital, but she was found to only be suffering from exposure and minor injuries. Number 2. The story of missing Martin Edward O'Connor, found after almost 2 weeks in the Grand Canyon, captured attention at the start of this year. His rescue on January 2nd, 2020 was praised by some as a miracle, and in some ways it was. The background to Martin's disappearance seems to follow patterns all too common in cases where people go missing in national parks. He'd been living temporarily with his brother when he left suddenly shortly before Christmas. It hadn't been the simplest end of the year for Martin. He'd recently tried to return to a monastery but been denied, so when he left a note saying he was going to sort things out and he might return by the end of the month, his brother wasn't too concerned. That changed within just a few days when his brother received a package from Martin. It contained his passport, a will, computer passwords, and other personal effects. Fearing Martin may have left to take his own life, his family tried to get in contact with him, then traced his last known whereabouts. Martin had checked into a lodge on the grounds of the Grand Canyon National Park on December 17th, 2 days after he left his brother's home. He stayed there for just under a week before checking out again on December 22nd. He hadn't been seen since. Martin was described by his family as physically fit and used to being in the elements, but the Grand Canyon in the winter can host extreme conditions. Even if Martin hadn't intended to take his own life, the below freezing temperatures and snowfall the canyon saw over the Christmas period led people to fear for his safety. The National Park Emergency Services announced a missing person investigation on December 30th, calling for anyone who had seen or spoken to Martin to come forward. Any search party would face treacherous conditions, and many feared he wouldn't be found alive, like many of the people who go missing in national parks. However, on New Year's Day, rangers received a report from hikers on the New Hens Trail. The trail is particularly difficult at the best of times and is only recommended to experienced hikers. Martin was found near the trail under an overhang where he had some shelter from the elements. It seemed he'd been camping there for a few days at least. He called to the hikers to tell them he was fine, had food and water, but to let the rangers know he was there. A helicopter went to the spot the following day and found Martin. He was brought back to his family and went through medical checkups. We can only hope that he's receiving the help that he needs. Number 1. Mohammed Algamal had been missing for around 3 months when his family were called to identify a body in the nearby Al-Arar hospital. The 46-year-old from Kaf al-Azhar had wandered off before. He'd been a successful teacher in his younger years, but had developed mental health issues in 2016 and would often go missing for weeks at a time. This time though, when he went missing in January of 2020, his family feared it would be for the last time. Despite extensive search efforts, there was no sign of their loved one, and when a relative informed them of an unidentified corpse at the hospital he worked at, they went to see if it was Mohammed. Most of the family agreed the deceased man was their relative, but one of his sisters didn't believe this was Mohammed due to some small differences between the body and her brother. A DNA test was conducted, but before the results could come back, the family had claimed the body as Mohammed's and the hospital issued a burial permit. A funeral was conducted in March when friends and family said goodbye to a beloved husband, father, and teacher as he was buried. Little did they know it wouldn't be goodbye forever. 4 months after Mohammed was laid to rest, a group of youths made a startling discovery. Mohammed was spotted wandering into the village where he'd lived in the early hours of the morning. He was unkempt, his clothes and hair dirty, but very obviously alive. One of the men followed him back to the cemetery where he had apparently been sleeping. He was taken to a local police station and his brother was contacted. To the brother's surprise, this was really Mohammed, apparently back from the dead. In a later interview with the brothers, Mohammed didn't speak and appeared to still be in some distress as his brother retold the story. Unsurprisingly, there are still many questions surrounding this case, not the least of all is who is buried in Mohammed's grave. It seems unlikely almost his entire family would misidentify him, but there's no information about the state that his body was in. The hospital has also come under fire for issuing the burial permit without the results of the DNA test. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.